Hello everyone, this is a Science Me video talking about I'm recording this in my bathroom because it is one of the quieter places in my apartment. Don't at me. It's hot in here. Well, it would be hot if I didn't have my fans on fully. Anyway, today we're talking about electrons and how it's freaking weird and annoying that people are saying that photons are being the medium of electromagnetic fields. What? How is that even possible? Photons move at incredible speed in one direction. They don't usually get moved in random, like, they don't just go anywhere unless they bump into something. And it doesn't have to, and it doesn't matter how many objects there are. Electrons and photons don't even, they don't do that. So why is it that I heard someone say that photons are basically the stuff that is flowing through the electron to make it have the electromagnetic field that conducts it to the atom? What's going on there? Well, the assumption of applying let's say you actually had photons in an electromagnetic induced field based on electrons and the atom. Well, then photons would be constantly going in and out of atoms. And there would be like a whole stream of them constantly moving. The electromagnetic field would be so powerful that light would just be sucked in from anywhere that is coming from. So like some material would be able to, like, just water would start to suck in electrons or suck in the light into their electrons atomic bonds. Like, you can't have this happen. So what are electrons really moving when they move electromagnetic fields? It's not photons. It's something way smaller. There's an energy soup that basically is what is the electromagnetic field. It is being pulled around by the electrons and making that same loop. That is not photons. It can't be photons because that would mean a lot of light energy would just be trapped in matter. And then light energy would be able to be released as soon as you destroy the matter. Which means the E equals mc squared stuff would happen, which means it makes sense that that is actually what is happening. But of course there's a limit. There's just a certain amount of light. And then all the rest of the light that is still moving around, shining on everything, would still be able to move because it's unable to be attracted by all the rest of the electrons. So then what happens if you have specifically dark spaces? What happens then? Nothing, because the material already has all the light that they need. What if material was birthed into existence from whatever, and then something ends up in darkness and can't You know, there's something missing, it feels like. The more I tug at these threads of electrons moving photons and having that be the medium of electromagnetism, it just feels like it almost fits. But it doesn't, actually. It can't fit because photons, they say, don't have an electric charge. What? Um, I don't know. I don't know. But the thing about it is that if you really think about it, the photons of light are still moving and basically interacting with something. That something isn't other photons. It is the electromagnetic field, which means the electromagnetic field is actually something smaller than photons, something they can grip to or flow through themselves. A photon is, generally speaking, a spiral football that for some reason interacts with the electromagnetic field in such a way that it spins, flowing itself forward like a propeller. Kind of. Maybe. Oh. And the thing about it is that it goes at such a speed that it literally can't do anything else but go at the speed of light. It can't exert itself harder because it just, like, it has a set amount of energy. So if you were able to impart more energy into the photon, you should be able to make it go faster. I genuinely, and I mean this when I say I disbelieve entirely that the electromagnetic field is having, I mean, there are certain things that you can release a photon when the electrons move up and down on the orbits with the atoms? Hold on. What does that mean? If the electrons move up and down on the atoms and then a photon is released, that means, technically, if a photon was being used to make the electrons connect to the atoms, then in order to go lower on it, you would have to have less of that flow moving or less photons, which makes sense. And then the moment you get more photons, the electrons would jump up another level. Which also means, and I've thought about this to the extreme level, what if you have electrons and all of that are the outside area of all these stars and all these planets, that they're interacting with the light, and that's what makes it bend. Instead of a gravitational field, it's the presence of electrons. So you could have a planet out there that is dead of electrons, like the moon, perhaps, and it wouldn't bend light as much, or it wouldn't bend light to the extent of its gravity. It would bend light to the extent of the electron fields. So if you found another planet out there that was no atmosphere, bigger than the or anything out there, a moon or a planet big enough that it doesn't, or how about this, a cold planet, for example. A cold planet doesn't have as much atmosphere, and no electrons around that. Would light be able to bend around that planet due to gravity, or would it be bending around, or would it not be bending around because there's less electrons in the atmosphere? It's something to consider because that means you can infer from light bending how other planets are constructed, possibly. Yeah, I'm almost changing my view as I speak because I'm realizing that if you do have the photon released as the electron goes up and down well, it would be released as it goes down because there would be less photons through that interaction between the electron and the atom. So in order for the electron to be bumped up to another energy level, it would have to receive a photon. That's just math. So is that what's happening? I don't actually. Part of my brain was like originally thinking that there is smaller stuff. That there's a small amount of energy moving through, that everything is moving. But what if it is just photons? So what if you make a place that is so dark, can you still have electromagnetism? And the answer, of course, is yes, because a lot of the materials that you're using to make electromagnetism have their own energy bound into them. You don't need external energy for magnetism or electromagnetism or like the bonds of matter. So like in total darkness, would you ever have physical matter? Because there was no light to begin with. And that's an interesting question. But in order to do that, you would have to find a way to strip all of light from matter. Technically, if you were able to strip all light from matter, then you could disintegrate an atom. And then if you were to be able to reintegrate the matter with a new configuration of atom parts, you can just use light and then shine a specific energy beam at that set of protons and neutrons, and it will reconfigure itself back into an atom? Question mark? Like, there's one thing for using a laser as the means of exploding a material, but I'm talking about you remove all of the light from the atoms, if that's really what's there binding it together. It's just light. If you somehow are able to do that, then you just have a bunch of protons, neutrons, electrons, or unless the quarks themselves are just light, but reconfigured a little bit, that would be bad because then you would lose everything. Like, it wouldn't just disintegrate the material to suck all the light out of it, it would just disintegrate it completely. Like, you wouldn't end up with protons and neutrons that you could work with. You would end up with nothing but a sea of quarks, and you'd have to figure out a new set of science to be able to put them back together, because they might just fizzle out or something. But hey, it is possible that if you could use an energy-based thing to move all the photons out of the thing, you could disassemble it and remake it into whatever you want. Standard fusion is just additive. You're just taking what you already know has a certain mass and stuff, and then having more bunched together in the same spot to make the heavier element. That's all it does. And it's pretty cool, and it works, and it's nice. Bye. Stop.